Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. Jim Harbaugh, who could have never gotten the Chicago job because they wouldn't pay for him, and he doesn't get along with the president, who was the former Big Ten president. Could you make, I had Harbaugh on Friday, and I really like him, and I always have. And I think maybe, John, I just like people. I support people who are smart and successful that the audience rallies against. And Harbaugh, because he's different and a disruptor, you know, he's Uber, and the NFL and college football can be a taxi. He is going to shake shit up, and I love him for it. But could I make the argument he was always a better NFL coach, and he would have been, he's built for the NFL because he doesn't placate, and college football increasingly is about kissing butt, and the NFL is about winning, and he's a winner.
When I watched him on your show and kind of make the media rounds, you know, when I was around Harbaugh with the 49ers and going to practices, he had this like huge chip on his shoulder, which was kind of weird, right? A lot of coaches that all they'd ever done was coach trying to prove themselves. He was already really famous. His brother was an NFL head coach, yet he had this chip on his shoulder like everyone had overlooked him his whole life and everyone was out to get him. And you watch him now, I feel like I see a different guy.
Same.
Definitely a more mature in the way he used to have this huge pushback against, I think, the media in a weird way, even though he could, when he wanted to put on the charm, he could. If you watched him over the last week, he put on the charm, kind of embraced it. Like, it's not worth it me fighting this. I don't have the energy at 60 years old. He looks definitely healthier. He's thinner than he was back, 10 years ago. I watched a guy that's just very at peace with where he's at and kind of knows what he's doing and isn't insecure is probably the wrong way to put it, but just is pretty dialed in. And listen, he can be over the top with the way he talks about players and stuff and Herbert, but I don't see how they don't win, and they don't win immediately.
Have you seen their schedule? Jesus.
No, I don't know.
The road schedule is Atlanta, Carolina.
Oh, he plays the South. Oh, that's the wins.
So the road schedule, in only one game, Kansas City, will they have the second best quarterback? They'll have the best quarterback in every game. The home schedule, now, Burrow, but it's at home. Lamar Jackson, at home. So they get some tougher quarterbacks at home. John, they lost 12 games, 7 by a field goal or fewer, most in the league by far. You can't tell me Staley to Harbaugh is not a 5-point swing. I don't think it's crazy to think they're an 11-win team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Harbaugh from the 49ers, where, you know, for the first time in his life, I mean, he was fired. He was basically told, you're not good enough because you're crazy, even though that aged pretty well on his side. And then he went to Michigan, and remember, he changed his offense midway through to kind of this modern spread, and he clearly hated it. And I think once he got back to his roots, he knows his way works. So he is very secure of like my old school way of football, which ironically, Kyle Shanahan's an old school guy, runs the ball, play defense, still works when it matters the most. He's proven it these last 3 years in Michigan. I think you're getting a guy that's pretty dialed, obviously. I mean, you just saw him win the national championship. But to me, you get a guy who's less abrasive. I mean, there were some stories with the 49ers like, damn, I could understand being the owner and people got in the checks. This is kind of absurd. Yeah. And I don't know if you're quite getting that guy anymore. And this is where I would imagine the Spanos family feels a lot better about this. He's not going to be fighting them all the time.
Well, think about this. Stanford, complete turnaround job. Niners, complete turnaround job. Michigan, complete turnaround job. Is part of what you see. He's like, shit, if we don't win 11 games, I can't coach. Receiver, left tackle, quarterback, back, 2 edge rushers.
High
pick. Also, last year's draft, 2nd and 3rd picks, couple of guys front 7 defensively, Tooley for USC, and the linebacker from the Pac-12, Washington State. I think Jim looks at this and thinks, how did they not win 9-10 games? I think this is the first job he's had where he walks in and think, if I hit on 3 draft picks and we're reasonably healthy, we can win our division. It's not a turnaround. It's not a gut job.
Well, here's the other thing. In the NFL, unlike college, now you have GM, essentially guys in college that help you run your recruiting. You need them with the transfer portal. But ultimately, the head coach is essentially the GM in college. You need a GM in the pros. a guy that can, from practice squad to college to free agency, there's a lot going on. And during the season, your only tunnel vision is coaching the team and the next week's game. And I think Harbaugh, what he went through with Trent Baalke, he gets a Harbaugh guy, this dude from Baltimore, which clearly he's very, very comfortable with. And John Spanos, he was pretty openly talking about it in the press conference. He likes him a lot. And John plays a role in scouting. So he's clearly very comfortable with their structure, which is key because the best coaches right now, ultimately Andy and Kyle and McVay, they're the highest guy in the total. They make the most money, but they trust their GM because they need him. And you cannot, his success, he's going to need to lean on this guy. So he needed a guy they could trust. They hired a guy. Like, think of all the success he's had now, taking guys from his brother. It's the one guy in the NFL he can really lean on. So when he says, hey, this guy's worth it, he's taking defensive coordinators. Now he takes an assistant, scouting director to make him his GM. I just think he's in a much better suited from a personal dynamic standpoint. I mean, that 49er team he took over turned out to be pretty loaded with a lot of talent. That team's more talented than this one, but the quarterback situation is pretty hard to beat.